The 2023-2024 NHL season is right around the corner. So what are we going to do? Obviously, we're going to have to make some predictions to see how things are going to shake out when the regular season ends. Now, before we get into my predictions, if you enjoy the video, hit the like button on it and let me know in the comments down below what you think your team is going to do this season. And if you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, enough chit chat. Let's get into these predictions. So we're going to start out east, and we're going to go with the Atlantic Division first. Going from bottom to top, here's my predictions. I think in 8th place, we've got the Montreal Canadiens. They just haven't really done anything over the offseason that has really impressed me, so I think they're going to end up dead last in their division. They're definitely going to end up in the bottom 3 or 4 in the NHL, I think. I don't think it's going to be a good year for them. Coming in 7th place in the Atlantic Division, I think it's going to be the Detroit Red Wings. Now, I think Steve Yzerman is still trying to get everything figured out for him and his former team when he was a player. I think he did a great job in Tampa Bay. I think he just needs a little bit more time to get his plan figured out in Detroit, but I don't think this year is really going to pay any dividends on that plan. Like I said, I think they just need a couple more years before they fully get into a contender spot for him. Coming in 6th place in the Atlantic Division, I have the Florida Panthers. Yes, I know, probably the biggest shock of this division yet. I think Florida, they're just going to fall off this year. I don't think they have what it takes to kind of get back to where they were last season. I just see them falling off and just having a very, very down year, and obviously making it out of the playoffs, finishing in 6th place. In 5th place, I have the Ottawa Senators, and I think they just barely miss out of the playoffs. I think that both divisions in the East are going to have 4 teams represent once the playoffs roll around. And the Ottawa Senators, they've made a lot of good moves over the offseason, obviously bringing in the likes of Vladimir Tarasenko and others. I think they're going to be a very fun team to watch. They have been the last couple of seasons, but still, I think they're just short of having what it takes to make it into the playoffs this year, but I think they're building and they could very easily be a solid lock for the playoffs in the next couple of years. In 4th place, I have the Buffalo Sabres. Yes, I know, finally they're going to make it back to the playoffs. Like I said, I think it's going to be a very close matchup between the Senators and the Sabres on who's going to get this 4th spot in the Atlantic Division to get a wild card spot, but I think the Sabres are just barely going to have what it takes. They were building solidly last year. I think they're going to have just a little bit more in the tank compared to Ottawa because most of their core has been together for longer, so I think that's what's going to push them over the line and get into the playoffs. Finishing in 3rd place for the Atlantic Division, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, they've got a couple of injuries, and they're probably going to get off to a slow start, but until they prove otherwise, they're just a solid NHL team. I think they're a lock for the playoffs, again, until proven otherwise. I don't think they're as good as Toronto or Boston, and that's why I think they'll finish 3rd in the division, but again, they're still going to be a very solid team. Coming up in 2nd place in the Atlantic Division, I have the Boston Bruins. Now, they've got a brand new jersey that they've released. It looks absolutely sweet, but with a couple of guys retiring, I think they're going to lose some of that leadership and some of that higher quality from those guys. So I don't think they're going to have any issues making the playoffs. They're still a great team, but I don't see them winning this division just because of that leadership leaving the building, which means I have the Toronto Maple Leafs finishing in 1st place in the Atlantic Division. The Toronto Maple Leafs, to me, they're like the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. They're always great in the regular season. They have high-end talent. They've got the star names, but they just can't seem to put it together in the playoffs. They finally won a playoff series last year for the first time since 2004, so they definitely have something to build off there. Who knows come playoff time if they're going to be able to build off of that, maybe get past the 2nd round this year. Who knows? Maybe. But yeah, like I said, I think they're a great team. I think they're going to comfortably finish 1st in this division. We're just going to have to wait and see what they do in the playoffs. Shifting over to the Metro Division, and starting in dead last in 8th place in this division, I see the Philadelphia Flyers finishing in 8th place. Again, they've traded away some guys just to get some cap relief for their season. Their roster is not really that good, and there's probably another team in this division that most people will have finishing last place. I think because they got rid of a certain someone, they're going to be fine. I think the Flyers are going to finish dead last in this division. In 7th place in the Metro Division, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, like I just said, I think they would have finished dead last if they had Mike Babcock in as head coach throughout the entire season, because that guy is just not a good person, really. Good coach. I mean, he's got a Stanley Cup to his name, so you can't really argue against that, right? But, you know, with the fact that everything happened with him, I plan on making a separate video about that whole thing and his whole career, really. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, the Blue Jackets, they're not really the greatest of rosters either, so I don't see them having a new head coach as any kind of thing to galvanize the team to make a playoff push. I think they comfortably finish in the bottom half of this division and land in 7th place. In 6th place, I have the Washington Capitals. The only real thing that people are going to be paying attention when it comes to this team is how many goals can Ovechkin score, how much closer can he get to the record. Hell, if by some miracle can he even break the record this year. We're going to have to wait and see. The supporting cast around Ovechkin's not the greatest. I think that they miss out on a playoff spot and they get 6th place. Finishing in 5th place in the Metro Division, I have the New York Islanders. Now, can anyone tell me that's not an Islanders fan, any star player outside of Ilya Sorokin that plays for the Islanders? You can't really think of one because they just don't have that star power, name in their roster. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing because they've made the playoffs in years past with pretty much the same thing. Not the biggest headline names, but a solid goalie and just solid play. However, I don't think that helps them this season. I think Ilya Sorokin again is going to stand on his head. Could win the Vezina this year, maybe. We're going to have to wait and see for that. But outside of Ilya Sorokin, I don't think there's much desired for this team that's not a diehard fan to watch. And again, I think they just barely miss out of the playoffs with 4 teams making it into the playoffs from the Metro. I think the Islanders finish in 5th place. Coming up in 4th place of the Metro Division here, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, they obviously get Erik Karlsson over the offseason, mixed with Crosby and Malkin and Tristan Jarry and that whole crew. I think this is the beginning of the end of the final push for this main core here for the Penguins. So I think they're going to have just enough to make it into the playoffs. And once you get into the playoffs, you never know, right? But I think the Penguins, their main core, they're just getting old and they just need a final push to kind of solidify this core, and I think they're probably going to get knocked out early in the playoffs, but like I said, you never know. I think the Penguins squeak into the playoffs in 4th place. Coming in 3rd place in the Metro here, I have the New York Rangers. Now, obviously, Patrick Kane is going to be out for a little bit, but when you have the likes of Zibanejad, Alexis Lafreniere, Kaapo Kakko, Ilya Sorokin, that defense, they're just really good. I don't think they have any issues making it into a playoff spot this season. I don't see them finishing anywhere near close to the top because I think both the Hurricanes and the Devils are going to be just in a boat race to see who can win this division. But the Rangers are a solid team. They're going to make the playoffs pretty comfortably, and I think they could make some noise. They could be a dark horse come next spring, but we'll have to wait and see for that. I see the Rangers in 3rd place. Finishing up in 2nd place in the Metro here, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, they're a pretty solid team. They have a great core, and they're going to very solidly make the playoffs. Like I said, they could easily win the Division 2, but I think the team that finishes in 1st place here is going to have just a little more in the tank throughout the regular season. When you've got Freddie Anderson in net, you've got Sebastian Aho, Svechnikov, all these kind of guys, and in their lineup, this team is just going to make a lot of fun hockey to watch, and I think they finish 2nd place in the Metro. Which leaves the New Jersey Devils to win the Metro Division. In my opinion, I think this team, they're really young, they're really hungry. I think they're going to make a lot of noise. Similarly to Carolina, I think they're going to have a lot of fun highlights. They're just going to be good, entertaining hockey throughout. And yeah, I don't think many teams are going to be able to stop them over an 82-game season. I see them finishing in 1st place of the Metro. Shifting gears to the Western Conference, and we're going to go to the Central Division first. In dead last of the Central Division, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, I don't think this team is going to do that good. I mean, you've got Connor Bedard, you've got Taylor Hall, but who else do you have, really? My hot take of the season is I don't think Bedard's going to be as productive as a lot of people are thinking. Maybe I'm old school, even though I'm 24 years old, but I think size matters in the NHL still. And all it takes is one big guy to absolutely clobber Connor Bedard to, shake him up emotionally and mentally, but shoot, physically, like, he's not the biggest kid. So we're going to have to wait and see how he reacts to all of that. He's a really good player. He's going to do really well this season. He's going to have some unreal highlights. But like I said, the Blackhawks don't really have much going on for him outside of that. So if he can't really get his feet moving quickly at the start of the season, they're really going to struggle. And who knows, maybe they'll have the number 1 overall pick again next year. We're just going to have to wait and see for that. But the Chicago Blackhawks, I feel, finished dead last in the Central. The team I have in 7th place in the Central are the Arizona Coyotes. Now, this is kind of similar to some teams I mentioned earlier. Like, until proven otherwise, the Coyotes are just a bottom half team in their division. I don't think they're necessarily bad, but again, like I said, until I'm proven otherwise, I think the Coyotes are going to finish in 7th place. Who knows, they could shock me. Maybe they'll push for a wild card spot. We'll see. But yeah, I think the Coyotes will come pretty close to the bottom of the division, the conference, the NHL. I think they finish in 7th place. In 6th place, I have the Winnipeg Jets. Now, they've got Connor Hellebuck. He's a world-class goalie, an all-time elite goalie. But their team outside of that just hasn't gotten better, and I think that they're going to struggle more because of that. So for that, I think they finish a little lower than some might expect. I think the Jets finish in 6th place. Finishing in 5th place in the Central Division, I have the Nashville Predators. Now, they've gotten a couple of guys over the offseason, especially in Ryan O'Reilly, some key veteran players there. But, you know, I don't know why, but I have a feeling that the Nashville Predators just aren't going to gel well together to start the year, maybe even for the full first half of the season. And that's really going to hurt them. I think they figure it out eventually, but it might just be a little too late. And they just barely miss out on a playoff spot. I have the same thing in the Western Conference, where there are 4 teams from each division making it into the playoffs. In 4th place, I have the St. Louis Blues. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I am from St. Louis, and I am a diehard Blues fan. So there's probably a little more of my heart than my brain telling me that this is where they're gonna finish in the Central Division this year and barely squeak into a playoff spot. But hey, I mean, if I don't have my fandom, then what do I have, right? I think the Blues, they obviously struggled heavily last year. They missed out on the playoff spot. But this year, I think they're going to figure it out a little bit more. When you have guys like Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas and Jordan Binnington, we just got Kevin Hayes this year from the Flyers. That's going to be a big leadership role. You got Braden Shen, just got announced as the new captain of the team. I think this is a dark horse in general. I think most people will still have them outside of the playoffs, and in all reality, I probably should too. But like I said, if I don't have my fandom, then what do I have? I think the Blues squeak into a playoff spot and finish in 4th place in the Central Division. In 3rd, I have the Minnesota Wild. Marc-Andre Fleury, need I say more? That guy's awesome. I've loved him at every single stop that he's made along the way. The guy is just electric to watch, and they have a pretty solid team around him as well. I think they're pretty comfortable to finish in 3rd place. I think the Stars and the Avalanche ahead of them, they're not going to make it close with Minnesota. But like I said, with the Blues, I think they barely squeak into a spot. So the Wild are just going to hold steady in 3rd for most of the year and just be comfortable going into the playoffs there. In 2nd place, I have the Dallas Stars. Jake Ottinger is elite in goal in between the pipes there. He's a great goalie. He's going to have another great season. The team in front of him, very solid. And you got like Jason Robertson, what a kid. He's going to go crazy this year again. I think the Stars, they might challenge for the top of this division with the Avalanche, just because the Avalanche have been so successful the last couple of years. But I think the Avs are still hungry. So I think the Stars finish in 2nd place in this division with a lot of points. And just like I mentioned a second ago, I think the Colorado Avalanche finish in 1st place here in the Central Division. Obviously, Landeskog is out long-term again. They're saying he might not even show back up until the playoffs next spring, which really sucks. But when you have Nathan McKinnon in your team, the absolute dog and the leader that he is, this team is going to be just fine. I don't see them having any struggles. Obviously, in this, there are more injuries to the team, but I think they're going to be all right, and they finish atop the Central Division. Which leads us to the Pacific Division. Now, this division, I think, is probably the most top and bottom heavy out of all of the divisions. You could make a pretty decent argument for most teams in any other division, but the Pacific, there's 2 teams at the bottom that I think are easy locks for like top 5 picks. And the rest of the middle part of the division, you could argue about certain spots, and the top few spots in the division are kind of locked in my opinion. But here we go. I have the San Jose Sharks in dead last of the Pacific. They might finish dead last in the whole league. They are not good. They've got to recover from all of the salary cap issues they've had from past players and legends, and it's just a part of the process. It's part of the cycle in the NHL. When you need to get young, you have to stink for a little while. So I think the Sharks finished dead last in this division, and like I said, potentially worst in the league. In 7th place, I have the Anaheim Ducks. Now, for the Ducks and the next couple of teams I have on this list, it's guilty until proven innocent, really. I don't think the Ducks have made a lot of steps into becoming a better team and making a push for the playoffs. So I think they finish in 7th place. I think they're pretty comfortable, that gap between the Ducks and the Sharks in this division, but I don't see them really pushing for a playoff spot either, so I have the Ducks in 7th place. In 6th place, I have the Vancouver Canucks. They just seem to get in their way every single season for X, Y, or Z reason, and it never pans out. So I have the Canucks in 6th place. I don't really have much else to say, but yeah, I don't think they're going to make a playoff spot. I think they finish in 6th. In 5th place, I have the Calgary Flames. Now the Flames and the team that I have picked in 4th place here, I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight between these two teams to make the final wild card spot. Because like I said, I think both divisions have 4 teams in the West, and the Flames will just flame out. Ironically, at the very end of the season here, I think they just barely don't have what it takes to make the playoffs. Still a good team, they're going to be fun to watch, but I don't think they have what it takes to make the playoffs. In 4th place, I have the Seattle Kraken. Now, like I said, I think it's a tough battle between them and the Flames as to who makes that final wild card spot. But the Kraken, obviously, they beat the Colorado Avalanche in the first round last year, so they're riding that high. I think that fan base, that city, is going to be behind them more than ever now, and that's probably going to help them pick up a couple of wins. So I think the Kraken, they're kind of similar to the New York Islanders. They don't have the biggest of names, but I think that their talent is still going to barely squeak them into a playoff spot, and I think they finish in 4th place in the Pacific. In 3rd place, I have the Los Angeles Kings. Now, this is a very solid team. They're younger, but they're starting to get some experience. They're getting a couple of years older, so they've got all that working in their favor. I think, similar to the Wild in the Central, I think they're going to comfortably finish in 3rd place, not really threatened by the Flames or the Kraken to drop out of a wild card spot, but not necessarily push for the top 2 spots between a couple of other teams that are obviously going to finish above them. So yeah, I think the Kings are a good team, and they'll easily make the playoffs. 3rd place. In 2nd place, I have your defending Stanley Cup champions, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. I think that Stanley Cup hangover is going to hurt them for a couple of spots in the season here, so I don't think they finish atop of the division, but the names and the greatness on this team is just out of this world. So I don't think they have any issue making the playoffs again, but I do think they don't finish ahead of the team in 1st place we'll get to in just a second. Like I said, just because they're going to, at some point in the season, have that Stanley Cup hangover and drop some points that they probably weren't expecting to. But I think they comfortably make the playoffs again and look to repeat as champions. And to finish off the Pacific Division, I have the Edmonton Oilers finishing atop of this division. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl over 82 games. Need I say anything else? You could probably argue that the Oilers are just like the Maple Leafs in the fact that they have great names and great star power on this team. They just can't seem to figure it out once the playoffs roll around. So, again, I think they're going to put on a show in the regular season. I think they're going to just rack up the points. They're going to be really good heading into the playoffs. But can the defense and can the goaltending help them out once the playoffs roll around? Well, that's not for a few months down the line. So, we'll see how it goes for them in the regular season. But, I mean, can you really argue against that 1-2 punch of McDavid and Draisaitl over an 82-game season? I know I can't. So I think they finish atop the Pacific Division. So there you have it. Those are my predictions for the 2023-24 NHL season. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about these positions. I have all these teams. Let me know how right or how wrong I'm going to be. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it. I would greatly appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new and you enjoy this kind of content. There's a whole lot more where this is coming from. So until next time, I will catch y'all later. Take care and peace.